Welcome back to Speak Up Spokane. Before we get back to asking the candidates your questions, we want to know if tonight's debate has changed your vote. Head to the KREM 2 app to vote in our live poll right now. Tell us if you might choose another candidate based on this debate so far. We'll check back in with those results coming up in a little bit. Meantime, we want to talk about climate change. This is also a topic we got a lot of questions about. Voters want to know how you will make Spokane more green. And this first question comes from Alex. She is a Gonzaga student. Take a listen.
Hi, I'm Alex Balkovats, and my question is how you plan to make Spokane more resilient to climate change.
And Ben, this one starts with you.
So I've campaigned very clearly on day one we would create an Office of Sustainability. There are 3 sustainability employees, but they're buried deep inside the utilities department, and they need to be raised up, and that needs to be a cabinet level decision. Because every decision the city makes affects our environment. And so that needs to be at the table discussing that. I would also seat the Sustainability Committee. That's the law the City Council passed last year, and the mayor never sat the committee. And they should be operating and giving suggestions for policy changes to the city to help us meet the city sustainability plan that we passed in 2009. I believe climate change is real, it's human caused, and we should be acting. And it was great to be at the Climate Change Forum last week at Gonzaga University, and I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about that issue together. But I believe it's a very important issue, and it should be a cabinet level position because we can do a lot to move forward. We've done a great job on the river and investing in a cleaner river faster. We've upgraded our sewer treatment plant, but we can do a lot more as a city. We could use vacant land up at both the north side and the south side landfills, which you can't build buildings on them, but you can sure put solar panels on them and put that solar power back into the grid. We've been working with Avista closely to implement those plans, and we can do a lot as a city, and I look forward to working with the citizens on this.
Nadine?
I think the city of Spokane has made great progress in this area. I also agree our CSO tanks and the stormwater projects that we've invested millions of dollars in to keep raw sewage out of our Spokane River is a must. We must do everything to keep our biggest natural, most important natural resource clean. Spokane Rivers never looked better. I applaud the fact that we're using compressed natural gas for our garbage trucks. That lowers our carbon footprint. I like the fact that all of our green waste is composted organically and local. When it comes to the 100% sustainable energy ordinance, I think it's unrealistic, and I think it's extremely too expensive. I know Avista supports Ben. Avista has endorsed Ben. They have supported Ben. Avista is a corporate monopoly. Its executives want nothing more than to charge you the most that they can lawfully for your energy rates. And they did a study that indicated it would cost thousands of dollars for each household every single year to be energy sustainable. And Ben has been working behind closed doors with Avista to increase our energy rates. I call out Ben and I call out Avista to make that study public and available to everyone so they know what the cost is. Again, these programs have to be realistic. These programs have to be affordable.
Care to respond, Ben?
I know my opponent's just a beginner, but surely she knows that the Washington State Legislature passed the most comprehensive renewable energy bill in America, and the city's renewable energy goals adopted before the state law were just that, goals. If she wants to lead the defense of the coal and fossil fuel companies, then she needs to take that fight up with the state of Washington. Those public meetings that we held with Avista and community members were public, and we discussed the issues, and that study was done before we finalized the language in opposition to us, and we actually changed the language to a goal so that study doesn't actually matter. And I don't think attacking Avista, which is a great corporate citizen in our community, is really a good strategy.
I think we still need to see the study. I call on Avista to release that study so people know exactly what they're getting into. I believe that we need to do more than we can, more than we're doing now to reduce our carbon footprint. But I've always thought that if we want policy that changes people's behavior, it needs to be done based on incentives and rewards, not penalties and fees. I know Governor Inslee is a big supporter of Ben. Ben was more important, found it more important to court a former presidential candidate's endorsement and not his own police department, but so be it.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one now. We also received a handful of questions about the growing housing cost in Spokane. One of our viewers, CJ, worded it best. He said, for many of us, the high cost of housing and rentals is a painful reality. He says, Many people living on lower incomes and now a shrinking middle class spend half of what they take home on shelter. What are your plans to address this issue, and how fast can you put that into action? This first question goes to Nadine.
We have a supply and demand issue, and we are seeing an absolute housing crisis. We should have been doing something 4 years ago, many years ago, really, and that's why I am looking forward to working with the Home Builders Association and the realtors. Ben will say that I'm in their pocket. He wanted the realtors' endorsement just as much as I did, and the fact that they're independent expenditures are spending money on behalf of my campaign. That's the only reason he's complaining about it. He also says I'm in bed with the developers. That's not true at all. You're the one who has the experience with developers. Ben, Ron Wells, look at the RIT path. Look what happened to that. And now he's facing insurance scam charges. And Rob Brewster, where you did, the second time you ran for mayor, you announced that you were running in one of his buildings. Nothing has happened there. They're abandoned, and he doesn't even pay the property taxes on them. I don't have a history with the developers. Ben does. So that case just doesn't cut anywhere with me whatsoever. We need to build homes. Not all of those homes are going to be in the city of Spokane. The city of Spokane is landlocked. That's why we need to work regionally with our neighboring partners to increase our housing stock so people can move out of apartments and into homes, and we get that flow that needs to happen because everyone is stuck where they are.
Ben?
So instead of attacking developers that have been doing great work in our community, I'm going to talk about my actual solutions. And I'm not going to talk about endorsements because I've got a long list on my website. But let's talk actual policies instead of saying we should just have more houses. We need rental protections immediately, and that's a mitigation fund that can get people through, and they show that about $500 can actually mitigate somebody becoming homeless when their rents rise rapidly and put them back onto stability. We need a rental relocation fund. If a building is being demolished to build a bigger building, which happens a lot, we've seen that. I've seen that outdoor building twice now, where entire apartment complexes are being torn down. We need a rental relocation fund. We need a risk mitigation fund immediately, and we funded that last year. The mayor still hasn't implemented it, and that would allow landlords to have basically a risk pool, and Boston's been very successful at that, and that risk pool would allow them to rent to higher risk. We need to ban the box for formerly incarcerated individuals. 25% of citizens of Spokane have been incarcerated before, but the boxes on rental applications immediately need to be removed. We also need to expand the multifamily tax exemption to our small business centers. We need to decrease parking requirements in order to decrease the cost of building a home and building an apartment, and we need to upzone areas. Those are specific changes and not a tax on people in our community.
Care to respond?
Well, you've attacked developers yourself, Ben, so you're right in there in the company with myself when it comes to developers. But I think we have to be careful when it comes to property owners. I talk to a lot of landlords, and we've got thousands of landlords in the city who do a great job. We've got a small percentage that do not. And if we want to go after those people, that's what we need to do, whether it's code enforcement or whatever else we need to do to clean up those properties and provide a safe place for people to live. But when if you start talking about putting caps or anything else on rent, we have landlords that own their buildings, and because they don't have a mortgage over their head, they're able to offer rental units at below market value. If we drive those people, and they're the ones that I talk to that say, we want to help people who are struggling and transitioning back into owning something and getting themselves back on their feet. But if we want to drive them out of the market completely, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot.
Ben, care to respond?
Yeah, so I listed 4 items. None of them were capping rent. None of them were any of the items my opponent talked about. I talked specifically about a mitigation fund. So that means if you're renting an apartment and your rent raises and you're going to be imminently homeless, about $500 actually stabilizes, and the Rental Housing Association of Washington State says that that stabilizes housing in over 90% of people that participate in a mitigation fund. Also, a relocation fund that is funded in the city of Spokane, it hasn't been implemented yet, would mean if your building's getting torn down, you would actually have money to locate to a new apartment. A risk pool is an insurance market that actually insures the property of rental units, and a box simply says people can still do background checks, but you can't have a box that eliminates people up front. None of those are what my opponent was saying would stifle the market.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next one. We are streaming, as we mentioned, this debate on Facebook Live, taking your questions for the candidates. Tim Pham joins us once again from the newsroom now with a question from one of our viewers. Tim?
Yeah, Mark, thank you again to everyone weighing in on our Facebook page. This next question might be top of mind for some parents. Victoria Stewart wants to know, how would you feel about allowing security guards and teachers at schools to carry and keep a gun in a locked safe?
This first response starts with Ben.
So I'm sorry, I'm coughing. So I've always said that our police officers have body cameras, and our police officers have an ombudsman. So if somebody were to be in a school and have the right to use lethal force, they should have body cameras and have an ombudsman. If we require that of our own police officers, that should be required whether it's resource officers or police officers in the school. And that's been my position from the very beginning, even when the city was negotiating.
Well, I believe we need to do everything that we can to keep our students safe. And if that means armed resource officers, I'm all for it. I believe that's something that obviously the school district and the union would have to approve. But I agree with any measure that would keep our children safe.
Would you care to rebut?
I just think if we're going to have Spokane police officers have oversight, then that same oversight needs to be in place if we're going to have other people. Because we would have to grant authority to the school district to use lethal force. Our police, the city of Spokane would have to say, your resource officers are now commissioned officers. So if we're going to require our own police officers to have body cameras for student safety, they should have the body cameras though. Because if we require it of our own police officers, it should be with anybody we commission.
Nadine?
I'm fine.
Okay, we'll move on to another one. Our next question, let's see here, is from a Facebook follower, Rebecca, and she wants to know how you'll improve our city's roads. She asked, what are you going to do about the bad road conditions? She says when she goes to Seattle or Idaho, the roads look just fine. And this one starts with Nadine.
Oh boy, well it's great if you have a good revenue stream to pay for these projects. The city is working right now under a 10-year levy, street levy, and we're a few years into it. And I agree, voters, commuters, they want smooth roads. They want the potholes filled. They want smooth roads to drive on. They have voted to pass almost every levy that we've had when it comes to street bonds because they want it so much. But I think we always can do a better job. I know the city is working on some projects where they use crushed glass to fill the potholes to prevent cracks that then don't turn into potholes because of our free thaw cycle. But we need to look at some innovative ways that other cities are keeping their streets smooth and paved, potholes filled. We can always learn from other cities. Idaho doesn't have the traffic that we have, so Coeur d'Alene looks great. But and Seattle has the infrastructure to keep up with those projects because they have an incredible tax base. We need to increase our tax base, and I want to do that through economic development. I have an economic development vision along the I-90 corridor to work collaboratively with our neighboring partners from Airway Heights, Cheney, all the way to Coeur d'Alene to target the I-90 corridor for more businesses, higher paying jobs. What's good for the region is good for Spokane. We increase that healthy tax base, we can start paying more and funding the projects that we want to do, including better roads.
Ben?
So I led with Mayor Condon the passage of the arterial street levy. In 2013, it passed by a record 76%. So we've spent record amounts for the last 5 years on our arterials, but where we're falling down is on our residential streets. When I came into office, we were spending $2.5 million a year, and those are the car tab fees. And if I-976 passes, those $2.5 million will go right away. But we've doubled funding over the last 3 years we're spending a little less than $5 million on residential streets. But really, if we want to start repairing some of those really awful streets that we see out there in the residential neighborhoods, we're going to have to find more general fund revenue, or we're going to have to partner with our partners at the state and at the federal government, because that's where we get big projects done. But I agree, growing our tax base is the best way to do that. One of the best ways to do that is to densify our neighborhoods, because the more people we have living inside the boundaries of the city of Spokane, the broader our tax base is without raising taxes. You just have more people contributing to the larger pot.
Care to respond?
I'm good.
Okay, this is our final question of the evening. This one comes from our Facebook follower, her name rather is Cheryl, and she wants to know about your leadership style and why you think it'll be an asset as mayor. Again, she wants to know about your leadership style and why you think it'll be an asset as mayor. First response goes to Ben.
So thank you to KREM for hosting this. Thank you to everybody at home that's watching, been watching on Facebook. Thank you, Nadine. I appreciate your time. My leadership style, I've run multi-million-dollar businesses. I started a nonprofit that eventually had 10 employees. I had 50 employees at Tickets West when I ran a 3-state region. And I, in theory, lead the city council office with no authority. I like to get a lot done. As I said earlier, sometimes I get impatient and that I'm very direct, but I'm also very collaborative. Anybody that's ever worked for me only has positive things to say. The Inlander did an article a couple months ago, and I believe I'm very collaborative to work with. I think that coming from the city council office and moving into the mayor's office has shown me that above my desk, if I keep a sign that says if you want people there at the landing, you better make sure they're there when you take off. And I believe we can have a really collaborative relationship moving forward. So I look forward to it.
Nadine?
Well, I've worked in a position of leadership in every newsroom I've worked in 35 years and led very diverse newsrooms and worked with people from very different philosophical backgrounds. And we all had a mission to do, we all had a goal, and I was one of the ones in the newsroom that led the standard on that. I think that the skill set of a journalist plays very well into a number of roles, leadership and management. As journalists, we listen, we engage, we reach out, we research, we analyze data. Great skill set for leadership. I'm a small business owner. I understand budgets. I also understand, I have the perspective of signing the front of a paycheck and not just the back of the paycheck. And I've always said that our mayor, David Condon, has given our next mayor the greatest gift of having a city on solid financial footing. And I will continue those responsible fiscal policies. I'm a pragmatist, and I also can collaborate with a lot of people. In fact, that's what I want to do for almost every part of my platform, whether that's public safety, decreasing homelessness, growing our infrastructure, and providing more economic opportunities for the people who live here and work hard.
All right, well, we covered a lot of ground. It went quick, but we've reached the end of our debate. So Ben Stuckart, thank you. Nadine Woodward, thank you as well. That is a wrap for our debate. Now the candidates have sounded off on your questions, so come November 5th, it's up to you to vote. The conversation does not stop here. There's still time to weigh in on our live poll. We're going to talk about the debate with our political reporter, Casey Decker, to check on your results coming up after a quick break. You're watching Speak Up Spokane, the KREM 2 Mayor Debate.